Welcome to our call. We'll get started shortly. But first, I'm going to go ahead and give the medical disclaimer. The information provided is for educational purposes and is not intended as medical advice or a substitute for medical advice of a physician or other qualified healthcare professional. You should not use this information for diagnosing a health or fitness problem or disease, and you should always consult with a doctor or other healthcare professional for medical advice or information about diagnosis and treatment. Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Dr. Dori Narbo, and I'm your host on today's call. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm a clinical researcher and an author of several books. So welcome to the call, Mr. Clayton Thomas, who is the chairman and founder of Root. So
for having me. Away we go. What's on tap?
Well, first of all, I'll just introduce you very briefly. You have over 25 years of experience in the health and wellness industry. For the past 16 years, he's focused on detoxification and nutraceutical formulations. So today I want to talk about vitamin D, since it's a hot topic right now, and how Clean Slate and Zero In can help. But first, I'm going to recap our talk from last week. So last week, we talked about the top New Year's resolutions for 2021. We talked about weight loss and getting fit. And during weight loss, fat breaks down and toxins are released into the bloodstream, increasing oxidative stress. And we also talked about man-made persistent organic pollutants, which we call, forever chemicals. They are silent killers because they can bioaccumulate, and they're endocrine disruptors that are stored in our fat, which is why it's important to include Clean Slate in any weight loss program. We also discussed better immune health and that it starts in the gut, and that immune homeostasis and we talked about the immune homeostasis and the innate immune system. And we also discussed that butterfly feeling that you get in your stomach is a network of 100 million neurons lining the gut that is so extensive than either the spinal cord or the peripheral nervous system, which scientists have nicknamed it our second brain. In fact, 95% of our body's serotonin is found in the gut. We also talked about barriers to eating healthy and overcoming addictions. We talked about learning and earning, and how dopamine helps to control and help us to retain what we learn. And then we talked about the barriers, about environmental toxins, internal and external, physical and emotional. And we also talked about how we connect the dots. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about vitamin D. And vitamin D is gaining worldwide attention as a therapeutic and agent, and is a global health concern, considering that 1 billion people worldwide are deficient. And currently, the role of vitamin D supplementation and optimal vitamin D dose and status, is a subject of debate, because large interventional studies have now been able to show clear benefit. It's really quite amazing when I was looking at all these studies, because you'll see there was so many different diseases and so many things that they're talking about, but there was always this caveat that, well, there's a problem because the small sample size, or they excluded the populations that were deficient, and they use kind of like a one-size-fits-all model approach, and they don't take into consideration sometimes the BMI and the vitamin D metabolism. And that was some critique from the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Whoops, let me go back one. Okay, so our agenda for today is vitamin D deficiency, what it is, how does it work, and why it's important, vitamin D and your health, and the role of vitamin D and toxic metal absorption, because that's the key. That's what ties everything together. So here's a map showing the global rates of vitamin D deficiency. they're seen here in North America, Europe, Canada, with a greater prevalence of vitamin D deficiency in the Middle East and Asia. And over 90% of the UAE and India population is affected. Even though they have a lot of sun, you know, a lot of times because it's so warm there, they're inside, they're indoors, they're using like excessive sunscreen users, the types of clothing that they're wearing, all covered up. And vitamin D status also fluctuates throughout the year, with the highest serum level after the summer and the lowest serum level, concentrations after winter. So the susceptible groups include people who spend more time indoors, like the elderly, those who are homebound, people with pigmented skin, vegans, pregnant women, and their developing children. So in the elderly, vitamin D production declines with advancing age due to decreased dairy intake, diminished sunlight exposure, reduced skin thickness, impaired intestinal absorption, impaired hydroxylation in the liver and the kidney, making the elderly population dependent on dietary vitamin D. And aging reduces vitamin D production in the skin. There's a decrease in concentration of cholesterol in the skin in the old compared with young individuals with a reduced response of UV light, resulting in basically a 50% decrease in the formation of pre-vitamin D3, which is interesting because it makes you wonder, you know, if they're taking statins. I mean, you know, they are. All of them are being prescribed statins. And so we'll tie back into that later. But just think about that for a little bit, because you know you need that cholesterol in the skin in order for you to synthesize the vitamin D that you're getting from the sun. So that's really key. Okay, so and also, you know, when I was doing a lot of research on this, I began to wonder, why do old people actually begin to shrink, break bones more easily? You know, I mean, Clayton, I mean, doesn't that make a little bit of sense? Like you think about it, like no vitamin D, they're losing the height, they're losing the disc space, the disc, you know, height in their back, in the discs and things like that. And then they're on probably.
You start to tie that all together, and it makes you wonder that as we age, and I think part of it's predicated on the country that you live in as well, that is there some incentive to shorten that lifespan because of the entities who are financing the longer life period. And you know, it comes down to quality. And I think, you know, of my conversation points now for a lot of stuff on Tuesdays after we do this is the rethinking of how we look at stuff. And when we look at longevity and when we look at wellness, and really when you look at allopathic medicine, and many people are going to an MD to have conversations about wellness parts of their life, and they're relying on the decision making of people that have zero amount of knowledge when it comes to, you know, the real aspects of wellness. You know, you'll never see my family or anyone in my family taking statins, because, you know, I learned long ago that your brain's made of cholesterol. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the areas. And when you look at that process, you go, okay, well, if you can decrease cholesterol, you can create other issues that are then treatable, which are going to need other drugs. But if you take care of yourself, good things can happen.
Absolutely.
But okay, like you hit on, it's not just one thing. So keep going, because I'm loving these slides, by the way.
Thank you. Okay, well, next we go to skin of colors, blocks sunlight absorption, and pigment in persons with darker skin blocks sunlight absorption due to the melanin, which absorbs the ultraviolet radiation. So they are deficient as well. Let me see. There. Okay, so what is vitamin D? Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin that is naturally produced in your body when ultraviolet light rays from the sunlight hits your skin and triggers vitamin D synthesis. The sources of vitamin D obtained from sun exposure foods and supplements go through 2 hydroxylations in the body for activation. The first hydroxylation occurs in the liver and converts vitamin D to 25 hydroxy vitamin D, and the second hydroxylation occurs primarily in the kidneys and forms the physiological active 1,25 dihydroxy vitamin D. So remember those 2 points because they will come up later. And again, I just want to kind of go back a little bit because, you know, the liver has 2 paths. Well, okay, so when you take a statin, right, there's 2 pathways in the liver. One blocks, you know, like blocks the your body from converting, you know, for making cholesterol, and the other blocks the synthesis for coenzyme Q10. So there's another issue there. But anyways, we'll come back to that. Okay, so how does it work? So vitamin D is available in 2 forms, vitamin D3 and vitamin D2. Vitamin D3 is produced in the skin upon exposure to ultraviolet radiation and is found in fortified foods and foods of animal origin such as fish, eggs, and liver. And vitamin D2 is only available primarily through consumption of plant foods, fortified foods, and dietary supplements. So the liver, again, is the primary site for the initial hydroxylation reaction that converts both vitamin D2 and vitamin and D3 to the main circulating form of vitamin D. So the first stop is in the liver, where vitamin D picks up extra oxygen and hydrogen molecules to become 25 hydroxy vitamin D. And this chemical that this is the chemical that doctors usually measure to diagnose vitamin D deficiencies. But although 25 hydroxy vitamin D is used for diagnosis, it can't function until it travels to the kidney. That, you know, this is where it acquires the final pair of oxygen and hydrogen molecules to become 1,25 dihydroxy vitamin D, known as the active form of vitamin D. Okay, so why is vitamin D important? Your body needs vitamin D to absorb calcium and promote bone growth. It plays a significant role in calcium homeostasis and metabolism. And vitamin D promotes the calcium absorption in the gut and maintains adequate serum calcium and phosphate concentrations to enable normal bone mineralization and to prevent involuntary contractions of muscles that lead to cramps and spasms. You know, back in the day when you're
down a little bit. The translators are having a little hard time catching up with you, but
oh, sorry. Okay.
You're good. No, you're good.
Okay. So anyways, remember when you know, we were young, I could say, being an athlete, anytime we had cramps, it was either, you know, go get a glass of milk or have a banana. Did you ever hear that one, Clayton?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see.
Let me see here. Yeah, the philosophies has changed, and I think we'll get into the fun part of what Zero In has in it, and you know how the process is entailed now. But
okay.
Anyway, keep going. I'm learning here.
So this is something. Do you have your pad and paper with you? You're not in your office. I'm just kidding. Okay, so this is something. But I
actually do. I do have my notepad.
Okay, well, I think you'll find this really interesting here. This slide here. So this is about the physical tissue barrier integrity. So in addition, a combination of vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc helps to promote tight junctions in the gut. Once the this complex is compromised, basically you're going to lose the selective barrier and become susceptible for the entry of harmful agents such as viruses, bacteria, allergens into the blood. So I think
And
that's
the leaky gut syndrome that people are very familiar with, and that's also, and I know Dr. Rao was on here, but in the previous conversations when Dr. Rao was analyzing the 0N formula, he hit on, you know, the regenerative aspects for the gut of 0N because of the combination of the vitamin D with some of the PACs and the other components. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I just, you know, showing this slide to give you an idea of the process that occurs in the body and just to show you the complexity of it. Because, you know, it goes to the liver, then from the liver it goes to the kidneys, and then it's going to go to the parathyroid, and it's really a complex system.
You took the time to draw all that out. It is absolutely amazing.
Well, I didn't draw that out, but you know, a lot of the slides, you know, I've done a couple tweaks here and there. Well, in most of it, but anyways, I think this is really interesting because, okay, so vitamin D, so not, you know, like, okay, you get vitamin D, but you know, where does it go? We're talking about like these receptor sites, right, for the vitamin D. Where is it going to bind to? So some studies I read say, well, there's 100, some say 1,000, but this doctor here is saying 27, you know, vitamin D receptors in 2,700 binding sites, right? So this doctor, Ramagopalan from the Wellcome Trust Center for Human Genetics at Oxford University, he identified 2,700 vitamin D receptor sites.
That's statistically significant.
Yeah, it's huge. So, so he identified more than 2,700 vitamin D receptor sites. And he says that this shows just how important vitamin D is to humans and the wide variety of biological pathways that vitamin D plays in this role here. So that's pretty significant.
And the question becomes, with that many receptor sites, what could there be that could block many of those receptor sites that inhibits not only the production of vitamin D, but also the assimilation? If you do have proper production through your organ systems and through your liver, when it comes time to synthesize that vitamin D and your receptor sites can use it, could there be things that block those binding sites that inhibit those binding sites from being effective?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We know what they might be.
We definitely know what that could be. Okay, so moving on, vitamin D in your health. We have bone health and osteoporosis. You know, bone is constantly being remodeled, and however, as people age, particularly in women during menopause, the bone breakdown rate basically overtakes the rate of bone building. So over time, bone density declines and osteoporosis can eventually develop. And then the bone health also depends on support from surrounding muscles to assist with balance and postural sway and thereby reducing the risk of falling. And so vitamin D is actually needed for normal development and growth of muscle fibers. In addition, inadequate vitamin D levels can adversely affect muscle strength and lead to muscle weakness and pain. So cancer is an interesting topic because we always have the caveat that observational studies and clinical trials, there's always mixed evidence whether it works or doesn't work and if it's effective or not effective. So, but laboratory and animal studies suggest that vitamin D might inhibit carcinogenesis and slow tumor progression. Okay, so for cardiovascular disease, vitamin D is associated with vascular dysfunction, which you'll get to see here later on about that. I'm sure you'll chime in here on that one later. Arterial stiffening, left ventricular hypertrophy, and hyperlipidemia. And for these reasons, vitamin D is linked to heart health and risk of cardiovascular disease. But again, observational studies support an association between high serum vitamin D levels and a lower risk of cardiovascular disease incident and mortality. And then we look at MS, for example. Well, there's many epidemiological and genetic studies that have shown an association between MS and low vitamin D levels before and after the disease begins, which I thought was kind of interesting. But then again, observational studies suggest that adequate vitamin D levels might reduce the risk of contracting MS, and once MS is present, decrease the risk of relapse and slow the disease progression. But experts say that, they haven't reached a firm consensus on whether vitamin D can help prevent MS, given the lack of clinical trial evidence. So for diabetes type 2, vitamin D plays a role in glucose metabolism. It stimulates insulin secretion via the vitamin D receptor on the pancreatic beta cells and reduces peripheral insulin resistance through vitamin D receptors in the muscles and the liver. But again, observational studies have linked lower serum vitamin D levels to increased risk of diabetes, but their results might have been confounded by the fact that many participants were overweight or obese and were therefore more predisposed to developing diabetes and having lower vitamin D levels. So in contrast to observational studies, clinical trials prove little support for the benefits of vitamin D supplementation for glucose homeostasis. However, isn't it possible that heavy metals plays a significant role and the participants in the studies have different levels of toxicity?
I think there might be a correlating factor.
I mean, I'm sure they didn't take that into consideration, right?
Well, because they're not you.
Or you. Okay, so weight loss. Observational studies indicate that greater body weights are associated with lower vitamin D status, and obese individuals requiring, frequently having, marginal or deficient circulating levels of vitamin D. Like I just said over here, that vitamin D and type 2 diabetes. I mean, weight loss and diabetes. That these two go hand in hand. And it's just so funny that when you're reading all these studies and they're saying one thing and then they say another thing, but they can't really confirm anything.
Well, I think, and this is an important part for people to really understand with when looking at clinical studies in wellness, right? And even in science, that a clinical study is usually done looking at one specific topic. And they want the data to support their topic. They're not looking at really a holistic approach. It's, oh, we're looking at vitamin D. We're not going to look at these other factors that can influence either positively or negatively the outcomes. They just want to see whatever they're focused on. And I think that's where we sit.
That's true. I mean, like this one here, they're saying clinical trials do not support cause and effect relationship between vitamin D and weight loss. But I can probably find many other studies that say the opposite. Well, I mean, this is what you find is that you read one study and then it's supporting it like, oh, I could go on, but I really don't want to focus on the disease stuff because it's more important to focus on, okay, like, vitamin D and what it can do for you, but also what's blocking it, because that's even more important. Okay, so, and oh, did you notice this slide here? Look, did you see that? I got zero in there. You didn't even see that.
Oh, I gotta zoom in on it. Say hello to my little friend.
My little gold capsules there. Yeah. Okay.
See,
Anyways.
and this is the fun part when we talk about what's in zero in, but it also looks like sunshine.
Yeah. Look at that.
It's
Okay.
the golden rays of happiness.
Okay. Well, no one ever told us about this interaction with medication, that vitamin D supplements may interact with several types of medications. For example, if you're on a weight loss drug called Orlistat, this you could actually buy over the counter here in Norway. It's called Ali, and you use it together with the fat reduction diet, and it absorbs all of the fat out of your body, but it also absorbs the vitamin D from all the food and supplements. So actually you can have lower levels. And statins, again, statin medications reduce cholesterol synthesis. So this, because the endogenous vitamin D is derived from cholesterol, statins may also reduce vitamin D synthesis. So that's something to, like all your statins will do that. And then, of course, steroids, your corticosteroids, such as prednisone, for example, often prescribed to reduce inflammation. These medications reduce calcium absorption and impair vitamin D metabolism. And then your thiazide, your diuretics, this combination with vitamin D supplements can increase intestinal calcium absorption, might lead to hypercalcemia, especially among older adults and individuals with compromised renal function and hyperparathyroidism.
And there's one thing that this teaches us that we learned in the 1980s and early 90s. Don't do drugs.
Yes. So excessive vitamin D, as I said before, excessive it can cause hypercalcemia. So excessive amounts of vitamin D are toxic, and it can also increase calcium absorption in the gastrointestinal tract and cause kidney stones.
We have an interesting testimonial on kidney stones from one of our new office staff, that she's had kidney stones for years, and she was wondering why her kidneys were, or she's usually had problems in her left kidney, but her right kidney was giving her some issues, and she had a little blood in her urine for a couple of days when she started clean slate. And we were talking last week, and she realized that she doesn't have kidney pain anymore.
Oh, that's interesting.
A clue.
So that brings me to this. When I was looking at the kidney stones, I thought, aha, we have to keep the calcium in one place, right? So vitamin D enhances the absorption of calcium from the food you eat. And when you don't consume enough calcium, vitamin D maintains its blood level by drawing the body's main calcium supply, which is your bones, right? So during periods of insufficient calcium intake, your body has no other choice but to use calcium reserves in your bones, even though that may cause bone loss and osteoporosis over time. So as vitamin D ensures that your blood levels of calcium are high enough to meet your body's demands. However, vitamin D does not fully control where the calcium in your body ends up. And that's where K2 steps in. And recent scientific evidence suggests that vitamin K2 is associated with the inhibition of arterial calcification and arterial stiffening. An adequate intake of vitamin K2 has been shown to lower the risk of vascular damage because it activates this matrix, it's called the matrix GLA protein, or MGP, which inhibits the deposits of calcium on the walls. So you don't want calcium, in the blood. You want that back in the bones where it belongs. So I always take vitamin D and K2 together. I've always done that. So I think
Well, and
you've
that's
talked about that before
we
in other
have, and that's
calls.
one thing. Yep, and that's one thing Christina is really adamant about, because as you're hitting on, the literature shows that in most instances, if you're going to just take a straight vitamin D supplement, you have to take vitamin K with it as well because of what you're hitting on.
Right. Okay. So this is the dietary allowance, but I just show it to you guys because it's important to know what the recommended guidelines are. But every country is different, so you need to check your own country's guidelines. Okay, so here is vitamin D sources. So few foods naturally contain vitamin D. The flesh from fatty fish, for example, such as trout, salmon, tuna, mackerel, fish liver oils are among the best sources. I mean, here in Norway, they always recommend cod liver oil. Like we take that in the winter, start taking that in the winter for the vitamin D. But what you're going to get with that, right? You're going to get a lot of mercury.
Oh,
right? So mushrooms provide variable amounts of vitamin D too. And some mushrooms available on the market have been treated with UV light to increase their levels of vitamin D2. And in addition, I believe the Food and Drug Administration actually approved this UV treated mushroom powder as a food additive for the use as a source of vitamin D2 in foods. And animal-based foods typically provide some vitamin D in the form of, in addition to, in the form of vitamin D3. And then you have plant milk. Plant milks, you have ready-to-eat cereals that contain added or fortified, in certain foods are fortified with vitamin D, orange juice, yogurt, and things like that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about sex or something along that line. Oh yeah, I see. I got his attention now.
I'm actually just doing some research into sources of vitamin K, so I don't sound like an idiot, and it actually proved my theory. But when you say sex, you have my attention.
Okay, well, you may no longer need that little blue pill.
There's a
And
blue pill.
well,
Is that a Tic Tac?
A little blue pill.
I've never had one of those before.
Well, I wasn't saying that you did. Okay, well, and here's why. Because vitamin D and erectile dysfunction go hand in hand. And
wait a minute.
yes.
There's many things that go along hand in hand when you talk erectile dysfunction as well.
Okay. Okay, well, a 2020 meta-analysis in Nutrients found a direct link between vitamin D deficiency and severe erectile dysfunction. And another study of young men with low vitamin D status found that those with vitamin D deficiency had worse erectile dysfunction. And this suggests a link between vitamin D deficiency and erectile dysfunction. So some studies show.
And then you have to dive into primary causes of vitamin D deficiency, and you end up getting back to the metals causing vascular stiffness and degradation of vascular function and arginine production. And you go, well, it's not just one thing, it's a cascade of things, as we hit on, but you can trace it back to a few different areas, because the endothelial lining is where all of that happens, and they can trace it to vitamin D, you can trace it to nitric oxide, you can trace it to inflammation, and it all comes back to the same place.
Exactly.
It's beautiful.
And that's what's so nice about being able to connect all the dots, because we like to do that, right? I mean, and you hit it right on the head there, because it's all about the endothelial dysfunction that's happening, and that's okay, low levels of vitamin D, that actually increases the risk of you having that because it's because of this endothelial dysfunction. So so not only do we have something for the men, but we have something for the ladies too.
Hey, ladies.
We have the ladies' garden. And that was named by Claire. Claire came up with the ladies' garden. So vitamin D.
And guys love flowers.
Okay, so vitamin D may help to restore vaginal health, vaginal atrophy, dryness, burning, vaginal lubrication that are adversely affected due to low estradiol levels during menopause. That's all about vitamin D. It's very interesting because this decrease.
And those points are not only important for women.
Mm-hmm.
But every guy wants to make sure all of those points are in good place as well.
Absolutely. So here is just a diagram of basically what I was hitting on there. Okay, so moving on. Now fertility, vitamin D and fertility. There is accumulating data suggesting that vitamin D may also be important for fertility, for pregnancy outcomes, for lactation, for PCOS, for endometriosis, for uterine fibroids, for abnormal sperm function, and reduced IVF success. And our observational studies show that vitamin D deficiency is a risk marker for reduced fertility and various adverse pregnancy outcomes, including preterm birth, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia. And this has actually been observed in women with vitamin D deficiency. In addition, it's also associated with low vitamin D content of breast milk. So it's really substantial for fertility. Oh,
Yep.
which what else is substantial, right? Heavy metals in fertility.
Who knew? Almost like there's a correlation here.
Exactly.
I don't know where we're going, but I think I know the end of the journey.
That's right. So here was something that I thought was really interesting. There was a study, 800,000 children in Scotland revealed that more children conceived in the winter months have autism. Oh, who knew, right? Go figure. Because I think I said it earlier, that your vitamin D is, high in the summer because you're out in the sun, right?
Yep.
You get more vitamin D, but by the time the winter comes, it's low again, right? So what they're saying here is that children conceived in the winter months, more children have autism.
Higher risk because of lower vitamin D levels.
Exactly.
Which you'd think there would be more breeding during the summer because of circadian rhythm and people lean out a little bit, so we look sexier and we're usually wearing less clothes. But a lot of times that's not the case because people are inside more in the winter and they run into each other more often.
And it's cold, so they're getting cuddles.
Exactly. And you got to make sure that you have more vitamin D so you're better lubricated, because the last thing you want when you're inside is friction. Terrible.
Okay. All right. So this is another slide just to show the factors. I mean, how everything's working when you're starting off with low vitamin D status during pregnancy. And then you can see here, like there's epigenetic modification here. There's in the placental development, fetal programming, and then you can see here, like as infants, what's happening, at children, adults, on to the elderly. And this is all related to low vitamin D status during life. So, leads me to this. This is what it's all about. This is the slide you've been waiting for, Clayton. What's heavy metals got to do with it anyways, right? What's heavy metals have to do with vitamin D? Well, vitamin D increases intestinal calcium and phosphate absorption. And what's not so well known is that vitamin D stimulates the co-absorption of other essential minerals like magnesium, iron, zinc, toxic metals, including lead, cadmium, aluminum, cobalt, and radioactive isotopes such as strontium and cesium. But lead, cadmium, aluminum, and strontium interfere with normal vitamin D metabolism by blocking the renal synthesis of vitamin of 1,25 dihydroxyvitamin D. And remember I said earlier that it doesn't work. Even though it goes to the liver, it needs to go to the kidneys in order to work, right? But you got heavy metals that's blocking this. So in addition to chemical exposure, you have, also linked to low levels of vitamin D, according to the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolisms, are your BPAs, your PVCs, your fire retardants, your PCBs, your BPBs, and your all these things, and your pesticides, your glyphosates, your insecticides, and of course, like I said before, your heavy metals, cadmium, lead, arsenic, mercury. So the whole point is that in order for vitamin D to work efficiently in your body, you need to detox the heavy metals and chemicals. And the way in which you detox is important because Clean Slate is not a conventional detox. It is a highly specialized detoxification product. So that's a wrap for me, Clayton.
Well, and there's one other thing that you have to add to that, which is so crucial because, and this is, I made a post on Facebook, I think it was a week and a half ago, about getting the greatest vitamin D supplement ever. And, a couple people raised their hands. I was like, you already have it. That was for the rest of the people, the 12 people that follow me. But once you can remove the toxins that inhibit the proper metabolism of vitamin D, you want to make sure that you're adding good amounts of vitamin D. And this is actually a source of disagreement and a little bit of a challenge for us because of what Zero In is and how much vitamin D is in Zero In, because there's 1,000 IUs, which is, I think it's 25 micrograms of vitamin D in each capsule of Zero In. And some countries think that that's too much, but as we're touching on, it's something that we need more of. But we were also hitting on the importance of vitamin K in combination with vitamin D. And it's really important when you look at and I will honestly say the genius of what Zero In is. One of the best sources, or one of the primary sources of vitamin K in foods, and it's one of the top 200, I'll say that, because celery, parsley is number one, but no one eats like a cup of parsley at a time. And there's many places to get vitamin K in foods. But curcumin is a great source of vitamin K. And what else do you find in Zero In? Well, pure curcuminoids. So you get your vitamin K, you get your vitamin D, plus you get this amazing combination of goodies that will help regenerate your gut and produce all of the amazing neurotransmitters that we love so much. But you're also getting your little ray of sunshine, which is why it could be a golden capsule of happiness, because vitamin D helps keep us happy. And so this is what's so crucial of so many aspects of conversation. We talk about wellness that you can play off of Clean Slate and Zero In and just wait for Restore, that you go down these different pathways where in the traditional realm, they're completely different conversation points. But when you really look at it, all we have to come back to when we're talking with someone is yeah, you should probably use clean slate and zero in and watch what happens. Because that's what they do. So should we get our Sandy report?
Okay.
Or what do we got? Let me see if there's any. I know there are some great comments and questions here. Let me see here.
I was also reading another article that was talking, remember how when they talk about when you should actually be out in the sun, they always say, you know, in the early morning hours or in the late evening hours, and stay out of the sun between 10 and 2. That's the worst sun. And you're
Yep.
supposed to get UVB rays, right? But I read an article that actually said the opposite, that said that is all wrong. We're doing it all wrong. And that you should actually, the best UVB rays is at high noon. I'm like, oh, I never go out in the sun in high noon. And they said like for like
I go out in the sun when I
10
can.
minutes.
Here's my philosophy. We shouldn't discriminate against the sun, because sun lives matter too. And I don't think it matters when you get it. It's about when you can get some, right?
That's right.
If you're in
You
the
got to
morning,
get it anytime you can get it.
You should be in the sun just like you should be in the water, and you should get your feet dirty. That it's all about balance. And some of the literature shows that healthy skin doesn't burn, right? So the more metals and toxins you can get out, the more time you're going to be able to spend in the sun, but also the quicker your skin is going to recover, from spending a lot of time in the sun, which also means that your body's converting more of that sun into goodness, than just burning toxic tissue. And, here's my philosophy on life. Get outside, go enjoy yourself. And if you get cooked, use some coconut oil. That's all you need, and it's all the chemicals and everything else you don't need to put on your skin. Just nourish your skin, clean up your body, and let good things happen.
Hey, Birgit says here that Dr. Rao knows everything about vitamin D. Where are you?
Well, why don't we have a Dr. Rao minute?
Let me unmute him.
Please. Yes, I do. Yeah. A lot of things I know about vitamin D.
Well, why didn't I have you do this call?
I don't know why. The first time this year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Stefan.
Vitamin D is the master vitamin of the immunological system. I don't understand in this crisis we have with this virus, that the governments don't put vitamin D at each person in their countries. Yeah. And when you think about vitamin D and the role of vitamin D for brain development, I only can measure about that the politicals who decided these pandemic are having a vitamin deficiency syndrome. Yeah.
But they have their own issues and they don't make good decisions. And actually, Stefan, it's a really good point, because today I actually have some senators in the state of Georgia that are receiving their first capsules of Zero In, because I there's a senator down in South Georgia here whose son I work with, and he called me last week. He's like, look, my dad is going crazy because they have all this legislation that they have to read through. They can't process the information. They're staying up late at night. They can't process any of this stuff. They don't understand it, and they're having to rule on it and approve it. And they're like, we need some of this stuff. And if this works as well as you're saying it works, all of the legislature is going to be on this stuff because we all need it. And maybe we can smarten up a few people. But it's the interesting aspect of, the different areas that we're now seeing that people are coming forward and saying, man, you know what, I need to feel or function better. And even I was talking to one of my practitioners yesterday because I needed to get Christina and Kreider lasered, and he's out with COVID. I'm like, dude, I can't have a practitioner who's not healthy, and with you getting sick means you're not healthy. So now I got to fix you, which means I'm not going to pay for you to fix my family. So it's a good trade.
So Stefan,
Yeah.
Can you please talk about a little bit more about vitamin D and the junction that I was trying to talk about?
There,
In the gut.
there is an influence from vitamin D in the microbiome because the immune system is in the gut and in the muscles, and you need vitamin D. I told you vitamin D is the master vitamin in your immune system, and the vitamin D influences a lot of bacteria in your gut. For example, if you have autoimmune deficiency or autoimmune diseases like leaky gut or what else, I don't know, your microbiome is changed. Yeah, it's increased, it's decreased. And when you are using, you can change autoimmune diseases by taking vitamin D, because all the people who have autoimmune diseases have vitamin D deficiency syndrome. Yeah.
So how much, what
Yeah.
would you say is an amount of vitamin D someone should be taking on a daily basis?
This is we are now in this call, we are now about 137 people here, and you have to ask these people how many vitamin D you taking today or yesterday. Yeah, this is the question. I only can say what I'm taking now. These are 10,000 units vitamin D with K, vitamin K. And I take this every second day.
Every
These are
second
about
day.
every second day. Yeah. These are about daily 5,000 units for me. And I think in this time in winter, you have to take, in my opinion, 2,500 to 5,000, round about 3,000, 4,000 units each day. And you have to ask these people here in this call, 137, how many vitamin D you take every day. Yeah.
That's
The
question.
recommendations from the government are about 800 units each day. This is not sufficient in this time in winter because we have no sun. And Doris told you, you have to use the light, the UVB. These are only a small percent of the sun, and you have to use it. You can't produce vitamin D in times from October to March, and you can't produce vitamin D by light only from 11 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is what you have to know about vitamin D. Yes.
Well, that's
when
very
you get
interesting.
older, and when you get older, you have less vitamin D because you have to go out on the skin. Every time I said, my mother, why you don't go in the sun? Why you are sitting among the shade? Yeah. And you have to free your skin for the sun, and the skin of old people is different from skin from young people. They can't collect the vitamin D with their skin. This is not possible for old people. You have to supplement vitamin D for old people, for their immune system, for their muscles, for everything, for their microbiome, for everything. They have to use the supplement vitamin D. Yeah. 10,000 units.
Yep.
After this call.
Yeah, everybody's going to be going out getting that.
Not daily, but at least a few times a week.
There are some scientific papers about the recommendations. You know these recommendations. I have to pay attention about the recommendations in each country. Yeah.
Romeo wants to know how much vitamin K. Stefan, can you answer that? Please? On the vitamin K, how much vitamin K do you recommend?
I'm using every day 200 microgram vitamin K. 200 microgram vitamin K.
Yes, but what if you're like on a blood thinner or something like that?
I have a combination from vitamin D, vitamin K.
Mhm.
What ratio do you try to follow? Is it like 20-1 or?
No, I don't know exactly. I have to look.
Yeah, that'll be the interesting part. I'm gonna have the
But
I'm gonna
yeah,
have the Pico do some research into that too.
you need different trace elements when vitamin D function in your body. Magnesium, for example, vitamin K. But also you have to pay attention about the vitamin D receptor resistance. This is also one of the problems people have, vitamin D receptor resistance. And if someone have vitamin D receptor resistance, the vitamin D will not function in their bodies.
Which is often caused by heavy metals and other environmental toxins blocking
For
those
example,
receptors.
influence a lot of things, brain development, all the genes Dory told about. And this is one of the important things you have to look for. Use your vitamin D every day in wintertime, and not only in wintertime.
In summertime. Well, I've got to bounce and get to my quick conversation on animals. Dr. Rao, thanks for hopping on here. It's great to see you. Dory,
Thank you.
phenomenal.
Thank you.
Everyone else, see you guys soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stefan. It was nice to see you.
Thank you, Dory. Appreciate.
Okay. Bye-bye. Goodbye, everyone. Thank
Goodbye,
you.
Dr. Dory. You look beautiful today.
Thank you.
Bye.
You always
Have
do.
a nice evening.
Bye.
We'll see you next week, same time, same place, and I think we'll use the same link for next time. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.